The next version of Intel Parallel Studio will be hosted in Visual Studio 2010. Can you detail the integration of Intel libraries with Microsoft library about the concurrency runtime?
Absolutely. This is one of the greatest developments in Visual Studio 2010 is the concurrency runtime and the concurrency runtime, the manager, the resource manager that comes with that. Because what that allows us to do is adapt all of our programming models so that they use the concurrency runtime to avoid oversubscription. Oversubscription that can happen if you mix different models. So Microsoft is using the concurrency runtime for their PPL and TPL. Parallel Studio 2.0 uses it for threading building blocks. For Silk that we're introducing, CT will also sit on top of the same thing and use concurrency runtime. Our implementation of OpenMP, our full support for 3.0, sits on top of concurrency runtime. So it really means these all mix and match. And then if you look at our libraries, like our math kernel library and the integrated performance primitives library, they use our OpenMP to implement on, and then that OpenMP sits on top of concurrency runtime. So suddenly we have a method that using Visual Studio 2010 that all of our models, Microsoft and Intel and hopefully any other company creating a parallel model, sits on top of that. That's a big step forward. We weren't at the point where it was absolutely critical, like falling over dead. But if we keep progressing the way we do with more and more parallel apps, many more cores, this oversubscription was going to really hurt. So it's fantastic that we have that. That is the #1 thing with Visual Studio 2010 as far as coordinating a new feature, because we've supported, we support and will continue to support Visual Studio 2005 and 2008. 2010 gives us concurrency runtime. It also gives us some nice additional new things in the GUI, menu-wise and so forth, that we'll take advantage of. And I can't remember all the details. I've seen demos of it, they look great. I think as developers look at some of the new features in the GUI, they should know that we're going to take advantage of those in Parallel Studio, the next version that we'll be in beta very shortly on that, and we'll have full product sometime late in Q3.
Actually, in this new version, there's two kinds of GUI. The GUI specific for debugging, and there is two views, and there is view about performance, CPU, thread, and core. And my question is, you provide some tools inside Intel Parallel Studio. Have you tried to mix your tool with Microsoft tool, or we will add several tools, Intel tool and Microsoft tool inside Visual Studio 2010?
I think for several of our tools, like our deadlock and race condition detector, which there's no equivalent, that'll look like an extra tool. We have a number of ways to look at performance analysis that complement the different tools. Again, they'll look like extra tools. So I think in that respect, we look like different tools. We're very tightly integrated on the compiler side, so compiler options all set up the same way. You might be invoking the Intel compiler versus the Microsoft. For instance, Silk will only be available on the Intel, but that'll look seamless. It won't look like two radical views. Also, we extend the debugger with some additional parallelism techniques, just like we did in the original Parallel Studio, but you're still using the Microsoft debugger. So the debugger and the compiler are very tight. The other analyses we can do on performance and on deadlock race conditions, they look like other views Microsoft has, but they're not integrated into existing views. They're additional tools, tightly integrated into Visual Studio, but still distinct.
Okay, I understand.